At this point, the autothrottle stopped responding, the speed is reducing, the pilot's applying more power, nothing's happening, throttle's fully forward, still nothing happening. And now trying to glide the aircraft down towards the runway, using speed to try and get further, and just crossing the A30. We've impacted the grass well before the runway. The aircraft is now juddering as the wheels are ripped off, and the aircraft comes to rest at the beginning of the concrete.
Investigators were crawling all over the wreckage again today, removing parts from the main fuselage and wings and examining the separated undercarriage. From his mother's home in France, the co-pilot John Coward described the landing as a series of thuds, saying he'd tried everything he could to keep the plane in a straight line. He was now desperate to know why it happened. The fuel tanks of other 777s are being checked after speculation that water inside could have caused the engines to fail. But this would have made the plane judder violently. That didn't happen. The Boeing 777 is the manufacturer's only aircraft equipped with a fly-by-wire system with a fully computerised autopilot and auto throttle.
It's standard for 777 pilots on a flight deck like this one to leave the throttle here in the centre console on automatic as the plane lands. From his starboard seat, John Coward repeatedly requested the auto throttle to increase thrust from the two engines. When they failed to respond, he pushed the manual levers forwards himself. Still no thrust. Although a physical move, the manual throttle passes on an electronic signal. So the question is, did the computer fail to send both the auto and manual messages, or were the engines incapable of reacting?
The AAIB's initial report just said the engines failed to respond. Could there be a clue in the different levels of damage each sustained? Whereas blades in the number 1 fan are visibly broken, suggesting this engine was turning on impact. Across on the other side, the number 2 fan is still intact, suggesting it was stationary or windmilling with no power.
The fact that there was no response from the engine controllers to a request from the auto throttle and from finally the manual throttle push from the pilots. And I believe that probably has to point towards some sort of failure of the electronic control systems that control the engines between the manual throttles in the cockpit and the actual electronic control on the engine themselves.
According to our flight simulator pilot, the Federal Aviation Authority has previously issued warnings about water getting into the electronics FADEC system of this plane.
The suggestion in one of them is that water build-up, humidity, forming ice in the system can then block signals from FADEC to the engines. At that point, the engines will no longer function, and the pilots will lose control of those engines.
The wreck will be moved from the runway into a hangar tomorrow, where the investigation will continue.